Hello everyone, my name is Charles Bassman and welcome to Bassman Studio. This is the first in many videos where I teach you the basics of painting. So I hope you enjoy and please remember to subscribe at the end. And now let's begin our first lesson. This is the reference we'll be using. We'll be working from a photograph. As you can see, it's a beautiful photograph of a waterfall with beautiful greens and grays. And here we have my palette. As you can see, the colors are arranged from light to dark, starting with titanium white, cadmium yellow light, cadmium red light, viridian, cobalt blue, burnt sienna, and ivory black, and plenty of mixing space. So we start out with a drawing using paint, burnt sienna, and we're keeping the drawing very open and light. Just thinking of big shapes with no detail, just placing the large areas where we want it. We're thinking of composition and large shapes. So we're just thinking of large shapes, no shadows. As you can see, I'm not putting any shadows yet. We're just figuring out where we want to place everything. So as you can see, as we continue to draw, it starts to come together. Objects start to look like what they're supposed to look like. We start placing everything where it should be, and we could see the composition taking shape. And of course, there's still no detail. And you want to keep everything as clean and light as possible. Don't worry about the small stuff. And as we almost finish the composition, we could start working on fixing it a little bit, if need be. And you can see I'm keeping all the areas open, and it starts to actually look like a composition, like something is there, yet there's no detail and no shadows yet. That's what we want. You want it to look like something. And you just want to go over perhaps something you've missed, something you want to fix, and now's the time to do it. And now we could start adding shadows, big areas, just showing where the light's coming from. Remember, you're still keeping things very simple. You just want to think of big shapes. Just a way of saying the light is hitting this object in this direction. And you're pulling objects forward and pushing objects backward while doing this. So it's what we call in art a monochromatic painting, or a grisaille. And you could see that things start to actually take shape. So at this stage, it should actually start looking like what you're trying to copy. Even with no color, it should start looking like that already. All right. And you want to work all around the painting. Just concentrate on large areas, large mass. No small areas yet. And we're still working in the burnt sienna, monochromatic, no color. It's still the drawing stage. We call this the underpainting. Now, of course, it takes practice to work this quickly, so don't feel like you have to rush it. Take your time. Drawing is very important. In order for your painting to work, the drawing has to work. There's no way around it. So just make sure your drawing is correct. Don't just rush into color. You never want to do that. So now that we've finished our drawing and we know everything is where it should be, we're going to start adding color. Now remember, we're still keeping things very simple with big brushes. So just avoid detail as much as you can for the moment. So let's continue. So again, with our palette, now we're going to start adding color. Now for me, this is one of the most enjoyable parts of painting. This is where it actually comes together. Things start to have life to them. So you want to look at, again, you want to think big. You don't want to think like small areas. So you're still working in large mass. Large areas of light, basically. So all we're doing really is showing where certain colors are. Remember, colors change. Although everything is green, there's different kinds of green. There's blue green, there's yellow green, etc. So you want to work all around the painting. Again, thinking of everything as mass, just big areas. And once you get a lot of practice, this part becomes like a very quick part. Your confidence level grows as you get more adept at painting. Just with anything else, the more practice you have, the more confidence you have. And you can see it starts to kind of come together and have life. Although there's not much there yet. But there is much there at the same time. There's the drawing. Drawing is there, and now we're just putting in like the colors, the local colors where they should be. And here I am, we're still working on all the greens, and you can see the water is a deeper green than the rest of the picture. So these are things you want to keep in mind when you're painting. What's lighter, what's darker, what's being pulled forward. Also, where do you want people to look? Where do you want their focus to be? Painting is telling a story, so you want to know, or at least you want to be sure of where you want people's eye to focus on your picture. And now we have a cooler bluish green. Part that's getting hit by light. So I'm not worried about shadows yet. And of course, I'm not worried about detail yet as well. Keep in mind, I'm not putting any detail whatsoever. Just large areas, just a way of showing exactly which direction the light's coming from. It could also show what type of day it is. And the important thing is that you see it come together. And here I'm mixing more of the cool greenish, whitish color on my palette. And of course, one of the most fun things to paint, for me at least, is moving water, which takes a bit of practice. But once you get the hang of it, it's a lot of fun to paint. And we're working from a photograph, but if you were to paint outside, of course, the light's going to change constantly, so you have to work a little bit quicker to catch that light. So as you can see, I'm painting in the direction of the water. If the water's falling down, my brush is going in that direction. And once you get more practice, the fear of painting diminishes, so you get more bold with color, more uninhibited, which shows in your work. And you feel free to exaggerate color as well. Aside from being a camera, we're expressing ourselves. So make sure that you express yourself and don't be afraid of doing that. If you think a color should be brighter, as you can see, I'm changing the colors just slightly. And here I'm starting to add the shadows. And now you can see things being pulled out. You can see the water being pulled out. We call this contrast in art. This is something being pulled forward. When I usually teach, this is the part of the painting that the students usually get very awestruck. It's almost very magical to see their painting kind of come to life this way. So you can see it's starting to have volume. And what I mean by volume is it starts to turn and have like shape, like real shape, like a three-dimensional quality to it. And you just want to go around. You want to look at all the shadows. Now, of course, some shadows are going to be darker than other shadows, so you want to really make sure that you're looking at things correctly. Some are going to be sharper and darker if they're forward, and some are not if they're falling back into space. And you can see I'm still keeping it very simple and thinking of just the big areas. I'm still avoiding detail. Almost like if you're a sculptor and you're creating a sculpture and you're just molding clay until you get the right shape. If you think of painting in that way, it starts to make more sense. People usually in the beginning, when they start out painting, they think they have to start with detail first, but that's not the case. You start with big areas first until you got it right. The details will come later. And of course, there's plenty of detail in our picture, as you can see. So here's where all the shadows really come forward. It starts to have more power. And we want our painting to have more expression than the photograph. So again, I'm exaggerating a little bit in the colors. And here we are continuing our painting. As you can see, I filled in most of the shadows. And once I know everything is where it should be and all the shadows are correct, I could switch to a smaller brush. And here I am blending just a bit. You could start putting in like where shadows are softer, as in that foliage right in the foreground of my painting. And of course I work all over the painting, and any object I see that should be a little bit softer, I start fixing it. The great thing about keeping it simple is that you can go back and fix it. It's much easier than if I were to do complete detail. We still want to look at our reference, so here I could even change the color if I want to. If I don't think it was correct, you can make changes. And keeping it loose like this allows for that. It allows like changes to be made. Because remember, again, you're still thinking of it as a large piece of clay, as if you were a sculptor. So you could still mold things and you could kind of shape them to what you want. So if the green isn't correct, or let's say I want to move something, I can still move it. And here I am changing more of the green to suit my purpose. Again, it may not be the green that's in the photograph exactly, but this is my painting, so I could change whatever I want to suit my expression. And what I'm doing now is I'm covering as much of the canvas as I can with color. So any area I see that's not painted in, where I can see the underpainting, I will cover as much as I can before I start doing detail. And you want to work all around the canvas. Look at the big picture. Don't focus on one area. And here we start, I'm using a smaller brush now, and I'm adding what we would consider detail. And you can see how long I've left off doing this. Well, until I had it right, until I knew that everything was correct. And here's where you could show the movement of water. And depending what kind of painting or painter you want to be, you could do the most minute details, but every painter starts out with the big picture, keeping everything simple, etc. And I work all around the canvas until I'm satisfied that all the detail is where I want it to be. Even the rocks. So you can see here I am adding a darker color on the shadows just to pull them forward a little bit. It's important in painting to have a clear idea of the message you want to come across. If you want something to push forward, you have to either exaggerate it or not exaggerate it in terms of what you want. But you have to know what you want, what kind of expression you want to show. And as you can see in the close-up, you can see the detail I've added in the water, different tones I've put. So I'm going around with each object, pulling things out and pushing things backward as much as I can. This is where the part of the painting starts to come alive. It starts to actually work. I mean, it should work in the beginning, in the drawing stage, but this is where all your effort starts to actually pay off. So here I could add the lighter part of the water. And I'm focusing now on the smaller things. Some artists like to leave their painting very sketchy, very loose. So it depends on what you want to come across. I'm generally a very loose painter, so I don't put in a ton of detail, but I put in as much as I feel is necessary for me to get my expression across. And sometimes I do like adding very small detail. And here I'm using a very soft brush to blend. These are little tricks you learn with experience. Because I want the water to look like water and different from any of the green leaves, etc., that are around. So you can see it start to come together. And now I'm taking a very much smaller brush, we call a round brush, and I'm adding in the very small detail. And with experience, you'll know when to do this. So once I knew everything was where it should be and all the colors where I wanted it to be, this is where you can start adding like very small things, any minute details that we might have missed or just put off. And this is a very, very fun part for me to when I'm actually painting, because this is when I know everything is working and I can start adding these like little small minute details, which can be very beautiful. But you never want to start out with a small brush with detail. And here I am working on the top, and I'm still blending, and I'm adding in detail, and I'm eliminating any harsh lines that I see, so that objects have a rounder shape to them. At the same time, I'm eliminating as much as the underpainting as I can. And the paint itself is still wet, so you can maneuver it and move it around and blend it. So you can see it's starting to really show like where light's coming from. Even on the top tree. Anywhere I could see, there should be small minute. The rocks. And also the small details on the bottom of the picture. So you want to look all around your picture and look where you might have missed an area. These are the final touches of your painting. So you want to make sure that everything is where it should be and everything is what you want it to look like. And you want to add what, in a sense, is like the special effects of a painting. Anything that you might have like missed that really bring it to life. And here I am, I'm adding like very, very, an even smaller detail with an even smaller brush. So as I said, you can go on and on until you have this most minute detail, but that's a matter of taste. The important thing is that your drawing is correct and your colors are correct. And here I'm adding just like the very, very small blending areas. Any areas I might have missed. And you want to go around. You want to look at it and you want to kind of analyze your painting and see maybe you missed something. Maybe you want to change something. And sometimes I think you never really finish a painting. I mean, you could look at it a year from now, and you could say, oh, I should have added this and that. So it's never really complete. But we'll call it complete today once we're done. And here I am. I'm just adding very, very minute detail just to bring things out. And to blend as well, to give a softness to the picture. And also to bring out certain surfaces like stone and water. You want to create a certain effect. And here we have it, our finished painting. You can see everything came together, all the light and detail, etc. Well, so ends our first art lesson on Basman Studio. I thank you very much for watching. Please remember to subscribe at the end and stay tuned for the next art lesson, which will be on Basman Studio very soon. Happy painting, everyone.